The ocean is both familiar and utterly alien. We see its surface every day, sparkling sunlight, rolling waves, the occasional seabird swooping down to snatch a fish. It looks calm, inviting, almost ordinary. But that's the greatest illusion on Earth. Beneath that thin, shimmering layer of water lies a realm so vast and so hostile that it makes outer space seem welcoming. The truth is, we've explored less than 5% of the ocean's depths, and every time we venture further down, we find lifeforms and environments that defy everything we thought we knew about biology, physics, and even the limits of survival itself. And this is why even the bravest scientists often hesitate before descending, because the deeper you go, the more you realize the ocean isn't just water. It's another world and alien, one that plays by rules we barely understand. At the surface, everything feels manageable. Warm shallows stretch out like a playground for tropical fish and vibrant coral reefs. Marine biologists can spend their entire careers here, swimming among technicolor displays, documenting schools of tuna or curious dolphins. The equipment is simple, the risks are reasonable, and the biggest dangers are strong currents, jellyfish stings, or bumping into a sea urchin. For young researchers, these waters are the perfect training ground. But they're only the first page of the story. The real ocean, the one that holds 99% of all living space on Earth, begins where the light starts to die. Descend just 200 meters and the transformation is immediate. Sunlight weakens until it's little more than a dim blue haze, and temperatures drop sharply as you pass through the thermocline, an invisible barrier that separates warm surface waters from the icy unknown below. Here, in this twilight zone, billions of creatures move in coordinated vertical migrations that dwarf anything seen on land. Every single night, the largest migration on the planet takes place, as swarms of tiny organisms rise toward the surface to feed before retreating back down into the dark. Most people don't even know this is happening. For decades, scientists didn't either. Sonar operators during World War II thought they were picking up false readings when they detected what looked like a moving underwater layer. In reality, they were detecting life, an endless wall of it that was moving as one. The adaptations here feel like something pulled from science fiction. Fish grow massive eyes to squeeze every possible photon from the fading light. Others abandon sight altogether, evolving bodies that glow with bioluminescence. It's a survival trick that can act as camouflage, communication, or a deadly lure. The vampire squid, for example, can turn itself inside out when threatened, flashing spines that make it look like a monster out of a nightmare. And yet, this zone is still only the beginning. The deeper you go, the more alien it becomes. At 1,000 meters, the last faint traces of sunlight vanish completely. You are now in the midnight zone, a place of eternal darkness where temperatures hover at just above freezing and the pressure is strong enough to crush steel. Human beings cannot survive here without advanced technology. In fact, even the machines we build often fail. Submersibles descend into this realm with redundancies stacked on redundancies, backup life support systems, emergency ballast, multiple communication links, because failure at these depths doesn't mean discomfort, it means instant death. The creatures that call this place home are among the strangest on Earth. Anglerfish drift through the black void with glowing lures protruding from their heads, tricking prey into coming close enough to swallow whole. But their hunting methods aren't even the most bizarre thing about them. Their mating strategy is so extreme, it sounds more like science fiction than reality. Males are tiny compared to females, sometimes hundreds of times smaller. Their only chance of survival is to find a mate in the endless dark. When they do, they bite into her skin, release enzymes that dissolve the tissue, and fuse permanently into her body. They lose their eyes, their fins, even their internal organs, becoming nothing more than a living attachment. Forever bonded, their entire existence is reduced to producing sperm on demand. It's a reproductive gamble where failure means death, but success means giving up your independence forever. This is what survival looks like in the midnight ocean, and it's not just the anglerfish. The midnight zone is home to colossal squids that grow longer than school buses and weigh more than 1,000 pounds. These creatures are so rarely seen that most of what we know comes from carcasses, washing ashore or being pulled out of whale stomachs. They've been the stuff of sailors' legends for centuries, krokens, dragging ships into the deep end. While the truth may not be quite as dramatic, it's every bit as unsettling. To survive here, animals have evolved in ways that stretch the limits of imagination. But the strangest part is that this is still not the bottom. The midnight zone plunges all the way down to 4,000 meters, and beneath that lies something even more crushing. The abyss. The abyssopelagic zone begins where most of us would assume nothing could possibly survive. Pressures reach more than 11,000 pounds per square inch. That's like having 200 elephants pressing down on every square inch of your body. To put it in perspective, a styrofoam cup lowered to this depth shrinks to the size of a thimble in seconds. And yet, life doesn't just cling on here. It flourishes. The Dumbo octopus drifts through these black waters, flapping ear-like fins that give it an almost cartoonish appearance. It doesn't need ink sacs to escape predators. There's no light to hide from. Sea pigs crawl across the abyssal plains in herds, vacuuming up organic debris that falls from above like marine snow. The tripod fish grows fins so long it can stand motionless on the seafloor, conserving energy while it waits for food to drift by. Every creature here is adapted to a world where food is scarce, energy must be conserved, and pressure could crush an unprotected human in an instant. But perhaps the most shocking feature of the abyss is the hydrothermal vents. These underwater geysers spew boiling, toxic water hotter than 700 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. And around them, life flourishes in complete darkness. Giant tube worms stand in clusters like ghostly white forests, growing up to 8 feet long despite having no mouths and no stomachs. Instead, they harbor bacteria inside their bodies that convert the vents' poisonous chemicals into nutrients. Yeti crabs wave hairy claws coated in bacteria they cultivate like farmers. Pompeii worms live with their backs pressed against water hot enough to brew tea, while their heads stay in cooler flows, protected by a layer of mucus and more bacteria. These ecosystems are so alien, they don't depend on the sun at all. They run on chemistry, not photosynthesis. And this changes everything. Because if life can thrive here, it could thrive anywhere on Europa, on Enceladus, on any world where liquid water and energy exist. Still, the abyss is not the end. Beyond 6,000 meters lies the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. This is the realm of trenches, where the seafloor splits open and plunges into unimaginable depths. The Mariana Trench reaches nearly 11 kilometers down. If you placed Mount Everest at its bottom, the summit would still be more than a mile underwater. The pressure here is over 1,000 times what we feel at the surface, more hostile than the vacuum of space. Very few people have ever seen it. In fact, more humans have walked on the moon than have reached the bottom of the ocean. In 1960, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh became the first to descend to the Challenger deep inside a tiny steel sphere. Attached to a gasoline-filled craft called the Trieste, the journey took almost 5 hours. At 9,000 meters, they heard a loud crack as one of the vessel's windows fractured under the pressure. They had to choose, turn back, or continue downward into the unknown with a compromised craft. They chose to go on. Eventually, they reached the seafloor and were stunned to see signs of life where none should exist. Creatures moved across the sediment, thriving under conditions thought impossible. They spent just 20 minutes there before beginning the 3-hour ascent back, uncertain the damaged vessel would hold. Against all odds, it did. For decades, no one returned. Then, in 2012, filmmaker James Cameron made a solo dive to the bottom, confirming once again that life persists even at the greatest depths on Earth. And the deeper we look, the more we find that challenges our assumptions. Foraminifera, tiny, single-celled organisms live in sediments once thought sterile. Entire communities may exist in places we can barely reach. And yet, despite all this, more than 95% of the ocean remains unexplored. This is where the fear comes in. The deep sea doesn't just scare scientists because of the physical dangers, though those are terrifying enough. A single equipment failure means instant death. The Titan submersible disaster in 2023 was a grim reminder that even modern engineering can't always protect us from the crushing forces of the deep. But the real fear is psychological. The ocean is the largest unknown territory on Earth. We have better maps of Mars than we do of our own seafloor. Entire ecosystems, perhaps millions of species, could be living in darkness, completely undiscovered. Each expedition that does return brings back data that forces us to rewrite the rules of biology, geology, even chemistry. It's humbling, but it's also deeply unsettling, because if life can survive here under pressures that crush steel, in boiling toxins, but when these same scientists prepare for their first deep-sea research expeditions, everything changes. The briefing sessions grow longer. The equipment becomes increasingly complex. The insurance forms multiply. Most telling of all, veteran researchers speak differently about deep-sea work, with a mixture of excitement and unmistakable apprehension. The surface waters had been a training ground, but the real ocean, the one that holds 99% of Earth's living space, lay far below dot, and that ocean operates by entirely different rules. Entering the twilight dot at 200 meters down, sunlight begins its retreat. The Neopelagic zone, stretching to 1,000 meters deep, earned its nickname as the Twilight Zone for good reason. Here, the comfortable predictability of surface waters gives way to something far more unsettling. The temperature drops dramatically through the thermocline, creating a barrier that acts like an underwater wall between two different worlds. This is where scientists encounter their first real surprise. Nearly 90% of all marine life by weight lives in this zone. The numbers are staggering. Billions of creatures moving in coordinated migrations that dwarf any land-based animal movement. Yet, until recently, we had barely been aware of this massive ecosystem's existence. The creatures here have evolved features that seem to have been lifted from science fiction. Fish develop oversized eyes to capture the last traces of filtered sunlight. Bioluminescence becomes a survival tool, creating an underwater light show that serves purposes we're only beginning to understand. The vampire squid gets its name not from its blood-drinking habits, but from its ability to turn itself inside out when threatened, revealing spines that make it resemble something from a nightmare. But the Twilight Zone is just the beginning. Scientists studying these depths quickly realize they're looking at life forms that play by completely different rules. The pressure here reaches 100 times that of the surface, yet creatures thrive in ways that push the boundaries of what we thought was possible for life on Earth. What awaits below makes even these adapted creatures seem ordinary by comparison. Midnight territory. At 1,000 meters, we enter the Bapelagic zone, also known as the Midnight Zone. Here, the last traces of sunlight die completely, and the real deep ocean begins. The temperature stabilizes at a constant 39 F2, and the pressure reaches levels that can crush a human body in a matter of microseconds. This is where scientists' equipment often starts failing. The Midnight Zone extends down to 4,000 meters, encompassing a vertical space larger than most mountain ranges. To put this in perspective, you could stack the Empire State Building on top of itself 11 times, and still not reach the bottom of this zone. In this realm, creatures have evolved adaptations so extreme they seem impossible. The anglerfish represents perhaps the most unsettling example of deep-sea adaptation. This is a humpback anglerfish, known as a black sea monster. These creatures use bioluminescent lures to attract prey in the absolute darkness, but their reproduction strategy is even more bizarre. Male anglerfish are tiny compared to females, sometimes hundreds of times smaller. They survive by literally fusing their bodies to their mates, becoming permanent sperm-producing appendages. Their tissues merge completely with the female's body, and they lose their eyes, fins, and most internal organs, becoming nothing more than reproductive parasites. This extreme sexual dimorphism exists because food is so scarce in the Midnight Zone that finding a mate becomes a life or death gamble. Males that fail to find females starve to death in the darkness. Those who succeed give up their independence forever, becoming part of another creature's body. It's a reproductive strategy so alien that it seems more like science fiction than a biological phenomenon. Deep-sea gigantism takes hold here with a vengeance. The phenomenon occurs because the extreme cold slows metabolism, allowing creatures to live longer and grow larger than their surface counterparts. Squid grow to lengths that rival school buses. The colossal squid, weighing up to 1,200 pounds, represents one of Earth's largest invertebrates, yet specimens are so rare that most of our knowledge comes from the few carcasses that have washed ashore or been found. In the stomachs of whales, the pressure at these depths, over 5,850 pounds per square inch, creates an environment more hostile than the vacuum of space. A human exposed to this pressure experiences what researchers grimly call barotrauma, a crushing force that compresses the body so rapidly that consciousness ends before pain can even register. Yet, sperm whales dive here regularly to hunt, holding their breath for up to 4 minutes, while battling creatures in pitch-black conditions. Their ribs are bound by flexible cartilage that allows their entire chest cavity to collapse and reinflate without breaking. Their lungs compress to nearly nothing, forcing air into their rigid windpipes where nitrogen can't enter their bloodstream and cause decompression sickness. Scientists studying these depths often face a sobering reality. They are visitors to a world where they cannot survive for even seconds without protection. Every research mission becomes an exercise in managing catastrophic risk. The submersibles used for midnight zone exploration must be engineered to withstand forces that exceed those experienced by spacecraft during research vessels descending to these depths carry emergency systems that seem almost absurd in their redundancy. Multiple life support systems, backup power sources, emergency ballast systems, and communication devices all serve the same purpose: keeping humans alive in an environment that wants to kill them instantly. But even this realm of permanent darkness and crushing pressure is just the middle layer of the ocean's depths. Below the midnight zone lies something that makes these crushing depths seem almost welcoming. The abyss calls. Below 4,000 meters lies the abyssopelagic zone, also known as the abyss. The name comes from a Greek word meaning no bottom because ancient mariners believed the ocean extended infinitely. Modern scientists might wish those mariners had been right. What we've discovered in the abyss has fundamentally altered our understanding of what life can endure. The abyss extends to 6,000 meters deep, encompassing 3/4 of the deep ocean floor. Here, pressure reaches over 11,000 pounds per square inch. Imagine the weight of 200 elephants pressing down on every square inch of surface area. To comprehend this crushing force, consider that a styrofoam cup lowered to these depths compresses to the size of a thimble in seconds. The temperature hovers just above freezing at a constant 39 F, and no light has penetrated these waters for millions of years. The darkness is absolute, not the darkness of a moonless night where your eyes might eventually adjust, but a complete absence of light that has persisted since these waters first formed. Yet life persists in forms that seem to mock our understanding of biology. The discoveries here prompt scientists to reassess the fundamental prerequisites for existence. Life doesn't just survive in the abyss. It thrives in ways that seem to violate the laws of physics and chemistry. The Dumbo octopus flaps air-like fins to navigate these crushing depths, having evolved without ink sacs because there's no light to hide from anyway. These creatures represent one of the deepest living octopuses, yet they've retained an almost childlike appearance that seems incongruous with their extreme environment. Their oversized eyes serve no visual purpose in the absolute darkness, suggesting they may be able to detect bioluminescence or chemical traces invisible to human perception. Sea pigs, actually sea cucumbers, drift across the abyssal plain in herds that can number in the thousands. These bizarre creatures resemble inflated balloons more than animals, yet they play crucial roles in deep-sea ecosystems by processing organic matter that drifts down from the surface. They move in coordinated groups across the seafloor, following chemical gradients in search of food, creating underwater migrations that span hundreds of miles. The tripod fish has evolved 3 elongated fins that allow it to stand on the seafloor like its biological tripod. The tripod fish lives in the cold, deep ocean where there is little light and the pressure is extreme, waiting motionlessly for food to drift within range. These fins can grow up to 3 feet long on a fish that's only about a foot in length itself. This adaptation highlights the extreme energy conservation required to survive in environments where food is scarce and pressure is overwhelming. The fish can remain motionless for hours, days, or even weeks, conserving energy while positioned perfectly to intercept any organic matter carried by deep-sea currents. But perhaps the most extraordinary discoveries in the abyss are the hydrothermal vents that punctuate the seafloor like alien oases. These underwater geysers spew superheated water reaching 700 F, hot enough to melt lead. The water is loaded with toxic chemicals, including hydrogen sulfide, methane, and heavy metals that are lethal to most life forms. Yet around these vents, entire ecosystems thrive on chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis, creating islands of life that operate independently of the sun's energy. These ecosystems represent some of the most alien environments on Earth, yet they may also represent the conditions where life first evolved billions of years ago. Giant tubeworms, some reaching 8 feet in length, cluster around